Hi, welcome back to my garden. If you're one of my regular viewers, you might recall that I embarked upon a rather ambitious 100-day challenge. How's that been going? Well, frankly, about 10 days ago I abandoned it. The wheels had sort of come off. I don't want to be melodramatic that my life was falling apart, because it certainly wasn't. But good quality time usage just ebbed away. And there was a reason for that. I was completing a series of proposals for federal cultural grant, federally funded. And that sort of bureaucratic form filling really isn't my cup of tea. And so I was continually finding myself pulled down internet rabbit holes. There was no solving that problem by avoiding computers, because I was writing the proposals in Word, on a Word document, and the proposals were being submitted via an online process. So there was no getting away from the computer, and every now and then I'd take a break. 10-minute break could quite literally end up being 10 hours over the course of the day. Dreadful. And I very much put the blame for that on the addictive nature of YouTube videos, the algorithm driven by clickbait. And if you've read the title to this video before watching, obviously there is an intentional, ironic sort of jest. Now, I don't know what the title will be. I've sort of haven't finalised it yet, so I'm speaking in advance. So I won't quote it exactly, but any comparison between clickbait and crack cocaine is obviously ludicrous, and also in and of itself clickbait. Well, of course I know that, and ha ha ha, you've got the joke. But I sort of mean it. For me, I don't want to say clickbait is exactly like crack. I mean, crack's a very nasty, squalid thing. If you live in a big city, you probably have a downtown area, certainly in Brazil, we do, which will go by the name, and I'll give the Portuguese version, but it translates perfectly, Cracolândia, Crackland. And it's a sort of decrepit, slightly abandoned, old CBD, which is now populated by homeless folk who are almost, to a man or woman or child, all crack addicts. And it's a dreadful business, and a lot of people feel quite angry about it. And if they don't feel angry, feel quite depressed, and an enormous sense of desperation at the plight of so many people. And clickbait does not do that to us. But I think it carries, in a big picture sort of way, a far greater poses, a far greater threat. And what I mean by that is that by the very nature, the disgusting nature of addictive drugs like crack, most people simply avoid going down that or even similar sorts of roads because it is physically repulsive and unpleasant at a certain point. You kind of recoil and pull back. However addictive it might be. But what I think clickbait is doing to to us as a society at large is it's dragging us in and changing us in a very sanitized, nice sort of way, but in a very, very damaging sort of way. It is essentially the propaganda wing of consumer capitalism, for want of a better term, and or consumerism in general. Mentions of capitalism start becoming politically charged, and after all, China is at the very heart of this particular global game, not just in terms of providing us with cheap, worthless cat to be bought in a pound store near you, but it does seem that Chinese society is as much a victim of this kind of consumer culture as anywhere else. And I do see it as being terribly, terribly damaging. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've done that at length on this channel. But I'm talking specifically today about the clickbait side of it, the way we're dragged in. And I thought I'd do a little bit of research, so I went onto YouTube, again, sort of all sorts of ironic overtones there, and I went to the channel. I'd seen this video before, but I found it easily enough. The YouTube science channel Veritasium. Fantastic stuff, maths, science, and all sorts of psychology, education. Fantastic channel. Deep dives, well researched, very popular, high production values, high quality production values. And he has a video when he talks about the nature of clickbait, and essentially talks about how he's used it in a positive sort of way. And he distinguishes between what he calls type 1 and type 2 clickbait. Type 1 is advertising for a good cause, and type 2 is misleading people or luring them in to content of highly questionable value. And I guess what he's sort of saying is that type 1 clickbait actually isn't a bad thing. Type 2 clickbait is a bad thing. Now, I'm not going to say I totally disagree with him, but my experience over the last 2 weeks, as I fell into an appalling cycle of procrastination and work avoidance, no sculpture for 9 days on the trot, and all sorts of other things in my life kind of fell by the wayside. And I was consistently spending at least 7 or 8 hours a day watching stuff on YouTube. And this kind of downward spiral was driven by the clickbait nature of things. So even if the content is of a really high quality, the fact that your ability to make a good decision in your own best interests is compromised by being lured in is not a good thing. And the fact that we become kind of addicted consumers rather than thoughtful participants and creators That's a bad thing. And actually, once again, the internet, or rather my computer, spat out a very interesting twist on all of this. The question of why we go down these dreadful rabbit holes. And one of my regular emails from a chap, I got it through sort of the chess direction. He's a sports psychologist, and he talks about procrastination and how a lot of it is essentially driven by an avoidance of pain, of bad experiences. And one of his solutions, and again, as is so often the case, I have spoken about this before, is this idea of using mindfulness as a tool to kind of gain greater agency in your life. But it does seem to me that if we're producing content, that perhaps we need to think less about finding larger and larger and larger markets, and more about building stronger and stronger and stronger communities around what we're doing. Now, Veritasium's point is that this whole monetizing process, it's a sideline in a very, very interesting video, well worth watching. His point is that the monetization of his channel has enabled him to make far better quality videos and spread ideas to a much wider audience. And quite simply, if he gave sometimes a sort of a maths-driven video, a maths for the layman video, if he gave it a title that simply referred to the maths content, he would just eliminate 99-point-something% of the people who might enjoy watching the video in one go. And I can see the problem in all of that. But perhaps the question that I'm sort of posing is that what we need to be focusing a little more on, is building that community and how we engage with that community, and how that community supports itself and then spreads out into the world. An example of this is, and again something that I've mentioned, is the incredibly powerful way that Alcoholics Anonymous functions. That you don't know, probably, like me, name doesn't trip off the tongue, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, the guy that wrote the 12 steps, the program and all of that. Because his whole approach was to start something and then allow it to spread in a low-key word-of-mouth sort of way. It is not top-down. It's very much bottom-up. And I think it is why it is such a powerful force in the world of combating significant problems, in this case alcoholism. What is this pain that I'm talking about as well, that we're avoiding, that I was avoiding? I need to dig into that a little bit more deeply, for me personally. I need to strengthen those techniques that allow one to overcome the temptation that leads to the pervasive nature of the rabbit hole, the sort of spiraling nature of the rabbit hole. Well, that's a story for another day. I guess if we're talking about how one deals with all of this, and I started out talking about crack cocaine and how maybe clickbait is a more dangerous threat to society if what it means is that we in a sort of Brave New World, Aldous Huxley way, sort of enslave humanity via pleasure rather than pain. What would be a better drug to compare clickbait to? And I think in a way it would probably be the sort of opioid crisis in America. Because opioids are good things. If someone is suffering chronic illness and needs extraordinarily strong painkillers, well, opioids serve a very valuable purpose. If, however, we monetize them and make them part of a multi-billion-dollar industry, well, maybe that's not such a good thing. Now, this has gone on a little bit longer than I planned. Perhaps it's because I'm rambling on a Saturday afternoon instead of a Thursday afternoon, who knows. But I think I'll call it a day there. As always, I'd be fascinated to hear what you think, so let me know in the comments below. And otherwise, I trust your lives are filled with joy. And until next week, ciao from a sunny Brazil.